Welcome back. We are on page 73 and we will be talking about skin color and then functions of the skin on page 74. So let's get started. When last we met, we were talking about the different layers of the epidermis. And I had mentioned one particular layer that is not in your book, that's found in areas of the body that have a lot of friction, like the soles of the feet. Who remembers what it was called? That's right, the stratum lucidum. Good. Okay. So let's talk about skin color. Well, first and foremost, skin color is determined by genetics. And the genetics for skin color are complicated and varied, but it all really kind of boils down to one thing, and that's melanocytes. Melanocytes are embedded within the stratum germinativum of the epidermis, and they produce melanin. And there's a picture at the top, page 73. The melanocyte is green. It's not actually green. I'm sure you know that. But it produces granules of melanin, and melanin is a pigment. It's a color. There are actually 3 different kinds of melanin. Your book mentions 2. There's eumelanin, which is a black and brown. There's actually 2 different kinds of eumelanin as well. So your book oversimplifies a little bit. There's a black eumelanin and a brown eumelanin. There's something called neuromelanin, and then there is another one called pheomelanin. Pheomelanin is like a reddish pigment that contributes to red hair and things like that. So the melanin itself helps protect the nucleus of cells from ultraviolet radiation. So in other words, exposure from the sun. That's what it is for. And the amount and type of melanin determines your skin color. And again, that's driven by genetics. So, oops. Oh, I thought I had a different slide. I don't. Okay. So basically what happens is whenever you are exposed to UV light, your skin produces more melanin as a result. And this is why you get a tan. And I think I'm going to stop the share because I don't have any other slides. Yeah, I'm pretty pale. I don't have a tan. But the melanin and the melanocytes are not necessarily evenly distributed throughout the body. In some cases, they are found more densely clustered, like when you have a beauty mark or a mole. Those are densely packed clusters of melanocytes, and they're producing melanin, and that's why your mole looks black or brown, or sometimes it looks kind of yellow or orangey. That would be the pheomelanin, and if it's black or brown, that would be the eumelanin. So you have melanin distributed all over your skin, some of it more evenly than others. And you have the same number of melanocytes as you do, as kind of everybody else. It's just the type of melanin that they make and how much they make that determines whatever color you happen to be. Now, because melanin protects the cell's nucleus from ultraviolet radiation, it makes sense that people who live in areas of the world that have stronger sun rays, like around the equator, they produce more of that eumelanin, that black-brown pigment, to protect their nuclei from the strong rays of the sun. Conversely, people who live in areas farther away from the equator, areas that are that receive less intense sunlight throughout the year, their bodies don't produce as much of that eumelanin. They produce more pheomelanin, and they have lighter skin. Now, there's another reason why, if you live in climates and actually less climate, more farther away from the equator and where the sun rays are less strong, that you would need to have lighter skin. And that's vitamin D production, which kind of leads us into our next topic about function of the skin. Your skin produces vitamin D from stimulation from UV light. So where the light is not as strong, you need to have exposure to that light and not be as protected so that your body can make that vitamin D. It's essential for functioning. But in areas around the equator where the sun is much stronger, you actually need protection from so much UV. Now your body will still make the vitamin D because you're still getting the sunlight, but you need that extra layer of protection. So that is really what skin color is all about. Early hominids, about a million years ago, they were covered in hair. You know, humans were real hairy from head to toe. So we didn't need to have dark skin. I mean, think about a chimpanzee, for example. Chimpanzees, if you shave them, they're pretty pale skinned underneath because they don't have to have dark skin. Their hair protects them from UV light. But about 75,000 to 50,000 years ago, you know, humans kind of lost a lot of that hair for one reason or another. And so our skin started to get darker. It is widely recognized that most humans, at least Homo sapiens, the ones that we are, started in Africa. So they would have been very close to the equator. So their skin would have needed to be a lot darker to protect from the UV light. And as early hominids, and this was about 30,000 years ago, started to migrate, of course, they would go to different areas of the world, and in certain areas, they wouldn't need as dark skin. And we had these variants, these light color variants in the skin start to show up. But honestly, if you look at the DNA across a wide spectrum of humans, even people who live in Alaska and you know, like the Inuit, their skin is darker because they have that same common ancestor. And their skin actually needs to be protected from the UV light that's bouncing off of the snow and ice and hitting them in the face. So their skin's a lot darker. You know, whereas people in Pennsylvania, you know, our skin's a bit lighter because we're not near the equator and we don't have snow and ice, you know, bouncing UV light into our face and needing to be darker. So that kind of explains some of the variation in skin color. And there's a lot of research that's been done over the years with specifically mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA is different than the regular DNA in our cells, and it's traced matrilineally, meaning that it's passed from mother to child. So you can tell long lines of matrilineal as far as like a family tree is concerned. And there are the same mitochondrial DNA for like 30,000 to 50,000 years back. So it's quite fascinating. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say about skin color, that it is genetic, it is for protection from UV rays, and it is highly variant in the population. Okay, now, at the bottom of page 73, you have abnormal changes in skin color. So this is basically if your skin is a different color than what it normally is, what could possibly be going wrong? First of all, we have cyanosis. Cyanosis is a blue tint. Typically doesn't occur on the skin so much, but like around the lips and in the fingertips. Cyanosis is a word that means the condition of being blue. Cyan is a color blue. So this means that you are not getting enough oxygen to these areas, and that is why they are turning blue. It is a bad thing, and if you are cyanotic, you should probably go to the emergency room. The second one there is jaundice. Jaundice is a yellowing of the sclera of the eyes, which is the white part, and of the skin, and is actually due to a buildup of a bile pigment called bilirubin in the skin and underneath the skin, and that's what actually turns it yellow. Jaundice is not a good thing either. Now, some infants are born jaundiced, and that is just simply because their little livers aren't processing bilirubin just yet, but it goes away very quickly, and it's not harmful to the infant, to the newborn. For adults, though, that have jaundice, it means that there's something wrong with the processing of bilirubin, and it's usually a liver issue. And again, it's something you don't want to see, so you would need to see a doctor. Bronzing, that's a golden brown color on the skin. Bronzing of the skin doesn't occur except in certain disorders like Addison's disease. We'll talk about that when we get to the endocrine system. When I say a bronzing of the skin, I mean it looks like somebody put fake bake on and left it on too long. Like it's a really kind of startling color. So if you see it, you might not recognize it, but you would see that maybe something is wrong. Oh, there's one other thing that I wanted to mention. Carotene, because your book does bring it up. Carotene is an orange pigment that's found in carrots. It is not the same thing as keratin, which is the waterproofing pigment in your skin. Different, totally different. But with carotene, the orange pigment, if you eat too many carrots, you actually can turn orange. The carotene can build up in your system and it can stain your skin. Now, to be fair, you have to eat a lot of carrots or drink a lot of carrot juice or freshly juiced carrots. You know, and if you're going that way, well, you get sick of carrots really quickly, but it can happen. It can be done. You're so motivated. But anyway, I wanted to tell you the difference between those two. Carotene is the orange pigment. Keratin is the waterproofing protein in the skin. Different things altogether. All right, what else do we have? Albinism. Yes, albinism is actually a genetic disorder where you don't make melanin. Now, there are variations in albinism just depending on how the genes express themselves. You can have I'm going to call it severe albinism, where you don't have any melanin at all. So your hair is white, your eyes are pink, your skin is extraordinarily pale. You cannot go out in the sun at all without being covered up because you have no protection against UV rays, none whatsoever. Then there's like less severe forms of albinism where you see people with like very light blue eyes, light blonde hair, but still very pale skin. They also need to be careful because they don't have as much protection against UV rays. Erythema, that's abnormal redness. That's all that means. This could be, it's not a medical emergency or anything like this. Erythema is something as simple as blushing, where you go abnormally red all of a sudden. Pallor, that's the opposite. That's pale skin. And again, it doesn't have to be a medical emergency. Pallor can occur for many different reasons. And then we have bruise or hematoma. And in this case, we're talking about different colors. So you know when you bruise yourself, it turns a lovely deep purple color. And that is the first stage of a bruise, essentially. And as your body starts to recycle the different parts of the blood that was leaked out into the tissues, it changes color. So at first, it's like a deep purple or red. And that would be, you know, part of the red blood cell, and then it turns yellowish, and that would be another part of the red blood cell, and then eventually like green, and that would be another part that hasn't been recycled yet, and then eventually your skin turns back to normal color. But it's a hematoma, just as a broken blood vessels under the skin. So this blood hasn't penetrated the skin, it's just underneath the skin, and your body will just reabsorb it and reuse it. And that's it. Okay, so speaking of functions of the skin, so we get back around to this. Functions of the skin are, dun, dun, dun. We'll go back to screen share here. Yes. Okay, functions of the skin. All right. We have protection. Yes. We have a physical barrier between the squishy bits and the outside world. Absolutely. It is a physical barrier. So protection and barrier kind of go together, but there's something else about the skin that makes it more of a layer of protection than just a physical separation between you and the outside world. And that is the fact that our skin does make oil. And the oil that we produce is acidic. And it's called an acid mantle. And basically, since our skin is acidic, well, bacteria, viruses, things that come in contact with our skin that might want to get in somehow can't, because of the physical barrier, but also because of that acidic mantle. The acid kills them, essentially. So that's just an added layer of protection. It's like a bonus layer. What else? Vitamin D production. Yes, I had mentioned that we need UV rays to produce vitamin D through our skin, which is just so brilliant. Now, we can get vitamin D by ingesting it. Most milk that you buy commercially is vitamin D fortified. Some orange juices actually are vitamin D fortified. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can just sit outside for 15 minutes a day and get enough vitamin D to keep you functioning. If you eat fish, you're getting some vitamin D. In fact, I had mentioned, variances in skin color. People living around the equator have darker skin, but people who eat a lot of fish, like historically coastal people, their skin is a little bit darker as well because they're getting the vitamin D through their diet, so their skin can be darker to protect them from UV rays. What else? Sensory perception, of course. You have lots of nerve endings in your skin. Some of them are for picking up just the very, very lightest of touch and pressure, like where you can feel a fly on your skin. Some of them are a little bit deeper, like more in the hypodermis and like the deeper layers of the dermis. And those are more for feeling pressure, which of course we do use in massage therapy as we go in with our airplane hand and we start to incorporate a little more pressure with each pass. Our skin picks up the differences in pressure and then relays it to our brain. You cannot feel, or you cannot help but feel through your skin. You don't have a choice. Whatever you come in contact with, whatever you hit or whack, you have no choice but to feel. And last but not least, we have thermoregulation. Thermoregulation is accomplished in one of two ways. So either your body tries to maintain its heat, like through the adipose layer, keeps the heat in, insulates, if you will, or it tries to lose heat. And this would be accomplished by what? What do you think? Yes, sweating, absolutely. Your body releases water, it evaporates from the skin, gives us a cooling sensation, and you feel cooler. Ah, yes, that's thermoregulation. So these are the 5 functions of the skin. In our next video, we will start talking about appendages of the skin, and then we'll get into the individual glands of the skin. I've purposely been vague because I knew we were getting there. All right. I'm going to stop the screen share. And we will end this lesson right here. See you soon.